So it looks like, Captain, there might be a break, or at least some saying there could be a break in the Indiana investigation into the Delphi double homicide that took place 2 years ago, roughly 2 years ago in 2017, February 14th. The article I'm looking at is from NBC News, and they're calling this a break in the, quote, down the hill murder mystery. I guess this guy was arrested in Randolph County, Indiana.
Yeah.
Which I don't know exactly where this guy was living or if he even lives in that county, but he was arrested by Randolph County. And we're talking like a 2.5 hour drive roughly from that area to the Delphi area. So this is not particularly extremely far away. The thing for me that jumps off the page right away, and I know that we might have different feelings about this, I'm sure others do as well, but personally, I think the guy looks at least like the drawing and then the composite drawing of the suspect in the Delphi double homicide. But there's also some argument how much the composite drawing actually looks like the guy that we saw on the camera footage.
Right, and that's where it gets hairy. I mean, you got a lot of armchair detectives that have looked at this case. And because you have a drawing, people have been able to take Facebook profiles and any picture of any possible suspect online and compare it with this drawing. And there's been plenty of people, I mean, especially when we cover this case, probably for 3 months to 6 months, I was getting people sending me a picture. Hey, don't you think this looks like the guy?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that look like this guy.
Right.
I think, again, like you said, we don't know how close to this drawing is, how accurate is this drawing.
Mm-hmm.
But we also don't know. Cops have released a couple pictures and there was a little bit of audio, and that's all that's been released. Now, do they have more footage? I'm assuming yes,
mm-hmm.
because from the pictures they released, I don't know how you could do a drawing.
So this stems from this article saying that some have said that the mugshot of Charles Andrew Eldridge, who was arrested on charges unrelated to the murders, looks like the police sketch of a suspect. And the thing here is the composite drawings are tough. You know, this is always a very difficult thing for investigators in these cases, because while you're charged with wanting to release the drawing to the public, because, I mean, obviously you need public help, you need the leads. The other problem that happens with that is, the reverse of that, I should say, is the problems that can create. It's the overwhelming leads that come in of, oh, my ex-husband looks like this guy, or some dude that I didn't like at this store looks like this guy. It's a lot of, this guy looks like this guy. And now these are a whole bunch of leads that are, yeah, they need to be followed up on, but they're also, it's troubling for the officers and investigators involved, because it could be sending them down the wrong path 100 times over.
Yeah, or you take a case that you're really close to, like the Amy Mihalovic case, and you have a composite drawing that looks exactly like a suspect.
Well, that one is weird because we've seen this in some other cases too. There are, in Amy's case, there are two popular composite drawings. And in my opinion, those guys, it could look like, to me, they look like different people.
Yes,
and
I agree.
And if you really dive into that case a little bit further, you learn that there was actually 3 composite drawings released. It was these 2 that they later settled on as believing to be more accurate.
Right, but then there's a part of you that goes, wait, you settled on these 2, but they look like different people.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you settle on the 2?
Right.
It makes no sense.
Well, in that case, you had 2 eyewitnesses, and they both had a different description of the person they saw talk to.
No, and I understand that point, but what I mean by that is, like, that would be like me holding up a picture of this guy, an actual picture, and then holding up a picture of another guy, and you go, well, those are 2 different guys. Well, but that's what we got.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I understand why they're doing it, because they're putting it out there hoping that anybody knows anything. And what we were talking about loosely, when you look this up, what I wonder is, we have with this Charles suspect, we have a guy that clearly has some facial hair. I mean, he has some scruff. So in the drawing, we have some scruff. Okay, so that is similar, obviously. But like I was telling you, people that know Charles, did he have a goatee for a while? And then when this drawing came out, did he just decide, well, now I'm just going to go with a mustache for a while because I don't want to go with this goatee because I look more like the drawing. And the other thing, too, is you have this bushy hair on the side in the drawing. And now you have with Charles, it looks like he, like a two-guard or something, haircut on the side. So pretty high and tight. It's like one of those things where did he have longer hair and then did he cut it? And people that know him or close to him would know these things. But what's weird, though, too, is, and I'm not trying to be funny, but if you look at where his nose and his eyebrows connect, it's pretty much a butt, right? So he has a butt right in the middle of his head, and that's not shown on the drawing. And I would think that would be a detail that they would be able to it'd be so dominant of a detail that they would put that in the drawing.
Well, it's going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my face here, but the thing is...
But I assure you, he's only talking out of one hole.
Right. With this comparison, we're talking about a 2-year difference in time. Hair is easy to change. The nose to me looks very similar. But then again, we're looking at a close-up composite drawing of an individual that may have only been seen on cell phone camera footage from a good distance away.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's, maybe instead of just nitpicking at the picture, because that's what's so weird is I've got this picture sent to me at least 100 times. Oh, it's a dead ringer. I don't see it that way. I could see that he kind of looks like the drawing, and that's all you need, really, because the drawing is not going to convict him.
No.
It's going to be what evidence do they have in the trial, not in the trial, but in the case. But again, with this case, it's very difficult because we're assuming that they have DNA. We're assuming that they're testing individuals, and that's how they're ruling out some of these other guys that have looked like the drawings, that have done crimes that would be similar to the crimes. Like the one guy that they arrested in Colorado, he's attacking people on a trail. That's the same exact scenario of crime. So here we have a different situation. Let's talk about Charles's crime, what he was actually caught for.
Well, I think this actually would link him to the possibility of being a good suspect, because this is from a January 21st article from this year. So this is extremely recent. But they state that Charles Andrew Eldridge, age 46, was arrested on January 8th on child molestation charges after messaging with an officer posing as a child. According to Randolph County Sheriff Art Mosner, I think is how you say this, the arrest has no connection to any murder, according to police. Now, you got to keep in mind what he's saying there is there can be speculation by the general public out there, but at this time, he's not connected to any murder. May he be at a later time? Possibly. They're definitely going to look into this guy. It's interesting that he looks similar to the composite. He might fall into that age range. I believe they said that they thought they were looking for someone possibly 45 to 50 years old. He's 46 years old. Yeah. Rough, so he could have been 45, 44 at the time. I don't know his date of birth. But then you have the charges of trying to lure a child is what it appears to me that he's going to be charged with. And we have an officer posing as a child who gets messages from this guy, and they go out and arrest him.
Yeah, so what's that show, To Catch a Predator? It's a kind of similar situation. They set up a sting operation. And then once they actually arrested him, he claimed that he had sexual accounts with another girl under the age of 13. So this guy is, completely a sicko. So, yes, but those aren't violent crimes. We don't know of any violent crimes. Now, what is interesting, though, too, is, and this is going to be like the cousin's brother thing. So So hold on to your seat for that. So people believe this monster, right? Charles, his ex-wife's grandparents. Okay.
Right.
So he was married. Her grandparents said that when they saw the picture on the news for the Delphi murders, they instantly said, "Hey, that looks like Andy." Well, that's what Charles goes by.
Okay.
Is Andy. So they said, "Hey, that looks like Charles." So is that something? I don't know. They probably don't like this guy. He was probably a creep anyways. He was probably a creep while they're married. So they probably don't like him. But I wondered, did they call this guy in as a suspect?
Yeah, that's a good question. Did they do anything with that information that they thought that they had 2 years ago? Or is this just them publicly distancing themselves from this guy that is a creep and that they have some kind of relation to? Real quick, just a quick throw this in here for anybody that might have any information. The tip line is still open, still available. It's 844-459-5786. And this is one of those weird cases. We talked about this when we covered it. We were, just 6 weeks away from when the murders happened when we covered it, I believe. But here we are, almost 2 years later, still armed with all that information that we thought we had. I mean, there's no better way to get a good description of a guy than to have surveillance footage of him. And
well, right, and
it's weird that it's shocking to me that almost 2 years later we don't have the guy in custody.
Yeah, but that's where it makes me believe that I think this person that committed this is a heinous crime. These are heinous murders, but this is done basically out in the open. So I just think it's a whole different level of animal that we're dealing with here. And I would believe that this animal would be in the system, and that is what makes me wonder if they have DNA or not. I mean, I wish they would just come out and state whether they did or not. I mean, that, and I know maybe that's given too much of their hand up, but that's where it becomes very difficult. They also say his former in-laws describe him as a lazy bum who never worked or took care of his 2 kids. So now we know that Charles has 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, why our granddaughter ever married him is beyond me. They said that Charles once masturbated on the floor in front of his wife and her friends, and that he was a violent G.I. Joe wannabe with hell of a temper, according to his former brother-in-law.
So it sounds like it sounds like nobody liked him in the family, and probably for very good reason.
Yeah, and so then the other thing is on social media, Charles is a devoted supporter of President Trump, and he also talks a lot about his guns. Now, I don't believe there could have been a gun used in the crime to control the victims, but we don't.
In the Delphi case.
Right, but we don't actually think that there was.
Well, I would think that likely there was some way of controlling the 2 girls, Abigail and Liberty, Abigail was 13 and Liberty was just 14 years old. And I say that I believe that there was some way of controlling them. And you and I have talked about this plenty of times. Obviously, the most easiest way of controlling an individual is to wave a gun at them or point a gun at them. And I feel like we have this thing that happened. Okay, right. So they're out in the woods, basically, out on these trails, having probably a good old time, and then all of a sudden, they are thrust into a situation that no one could comprehend, no one would believe would happen. And I feel like, we have the proof that they were brave, because we know that they took the risk of getting an image of this guy and recording his voice.
Right.
So we have that bravery level that is just over and beyond what most of us would probably do in a situation. Mind you, they're children. I almost feel like whoever did this double homicide had some form of controlling them. I don't think that these 2 girls, I think they were too tough. I think they were too brave. I think that if he would have just shown up with no weapon at all, I don't think they were going to go anywhere with him.
Right, but so we have to really figure out, though, where he is located. Do we have an alibi for that day? Because from what I roughly looked up on the internet, this is not like 10 minutes away.
Right.
This is a little bit further of a drive. It also says that his ex-wife's grandmother said that he used to try to get children to go into the woods with him. I never let any of the kids go with him. I never trusted, well, she says Andy, but again, Charles. Again, it's like, if he's trying to get children to go into the woods with him, maybe you should call the cops if you think there is something serious going on.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wonder, like I said, this guy is a dirtbag. This guy is a piece of shit wrapped in a piece of shit. Okay. But is this guy, was he arrested and now it's just, his ex-in-laws talking shit about him? You know what I mean? Because like I said, trying to solicitate a minor, as much as that is an awful, probably to me, one of the worst things. I mean, I can't stand pedophiles or, just worse individuals. But is that a pedophile that's also a murderer?
Well, I get what you're saying with the MO being completely different, but if one thing's going to get you to change your MO, will be that your face is plastered all over the news and everywhere out there, along with a short clip of your voice saying down the hill. If this guy,
I don't think that changes your MO though. And
why?
But hold on.
I mean, if you almost get caught doing something, if you expose yourself in a way that you didn't believe would happen.
Dude, this guy's fine with exposing himself. I mean, he jerked off in front of her friend.
Well, I get what you're
not only is he going to jerk off in front of the wife,
for the sake of a conversation here,
or an argument, you're trying to fight.
No, but I don't understand why you think that this wouldn't change or encourage someone to adapt their MO.
Well, but what we've seen in the past, what history tells us, is these people ramp things up. They don't create a murder and then go back to just, fondling kids or trying to have sex with kids. If this was the first murder, there will be more from this individual. So what I'm saying is I don't disagree with you, but we also can't say that the MO has changed, because he contacted a child under the age of 13 that just so happened to be a police officer. If that child wasn't a police officer and was actually a child, then what happens to that child? That child could have been murdered as well. We don't know.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So it's the MO, we don't know. You can't even say it's different, because we don't know what would have happened if he would have actually. No, and that's what I mean.
That's part of my point, though, too. I thought you were going down a road to suggest that I don't think it's this dude, because this seems like a completely different MO. Where I would argue both sides of that would be: one, we don't know what his real MO ever was,
right?
And two, if that was his one time, the way that he did this double homicide, I could see good reason for him changing how he goes about finding his next victim. Because it's not so much about, my thing is getting kids into the woods with me.
Right.
It's more so about finding the victim,
right.
Making the connection to a victim. Who knows? Let's pretend. Now, we've got to be completely transparent here. Everything here is just speculation. We don't know if this Charles Andrew Eldridge is even connected to this. And hopefully we'll find out more as time goes along. But who's to say that, let's say Charles, Andy, whatever he,
Let's just call him Charles.
Okay, so Charles, let's say.
Because he doesn't want to be called Charles. He goes by Andy. So we're calling him Charles because, fuck that guy.
But who's to say he wasn't messaging girls 2 years ago, 3 years ago, trying to get them to meet him somewhere, and it never worked out for him.
I believe so.
And out of frustration, out of some kind of desperation on his part, he decides, I'm going to go out in the woods and wait for them to come to me. You know, and one thing we talked about when we covered the Delphi case, who's to say that that individual wasn't out there just watching and waiting for the perfect opportunity for them to find a victim?
Right. And what we do know was he was soliciting, which, like we said, turned out to be a police officer. But he did confess. Now, he probably won't be charged with that, but he did confess to have multiple sexual encounters with another under 13-year-old girl. So
I wonder, here's my thought on that. I wonder if police investigators were already hip to what he was doing, and they lured him in some fashion.
Right.
With this undercover agent. Which,
I mean, really, this goes back to that documentary, Call Me Lucky. Without the work that was done in that documentary, they would not be doing this stuff today. They would not be going into these chat rooms and going into these different online avenues to lure these monsters out of their woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty interesting. Now, I hope, what I'm saying, there's two things is what I'm saying. I hope Charles is the guy. I hope that we can have some kind of closure as far as the case goes. That somebody that we can charge and is responsible for these murders, and then we know that this monster is off the streets. The issue, though, is like with the family, like Liberty's family. They talked about where was it? Somewhere in the article it said when they get calls like this or they find out information, obviously they want to be optimistic. But once we get a call that says, "Hey, we made our arrest and we've confirmed that it's the guy,"
right?
And here's another situation, just like the guy from Colorado. Well, he was from Indiana, but had the crime in Colorado, and he looked like he matched the drawing pretty well.
He looked similar to the composite, yeah.
And so you go, okay, well, for their family, this has happened so much that right when I saw this picture, and it doesn't look like the drawing to me, but again, that doesn't mean it's not the guy. I just feel for their family because is this another way of getting their hopes up, and then that we're just going to come out, in a couple months and say, it's not the guy.
But, one thing that makes me feel good about the investigation, the ongoing investigation, and the public's help and assistance and response to what happened in current events as well, is one thing this shows me is that the public this case has not gone cold for the public. They right. Still seem to be involved. And like I said, the headline of this article is some have said that the mugshot of Charles Andrew Eldridge looks like the police sketch. And so I think that the troubling thing here is, like you said, what DNA evidence do they have? Because it's not going to be you look like this guy, therefore you're guilty.
Right.
It's going to have to be physical evidence that gets a conviction in this double homicide. I mean, his whole thing with his confessing too is right. A lot of times these guys, and when I say that, I'm referring to the Delphi killer. These guys, when they're picked up on lesser charges or they're caught in the act before they are actually trying to kill someone or take someone's life, they will confess to just about everything because they don't want to be looked into as much. They don't want people to take a deep dive into their background.
Right.
And, you have to wonder, is he just going, yeah, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. Delphi, I don't know anything about it, trying to get himself cleared and move forward with being charged with whatever they will eventually charge him with. You have to take that into consideration.
Well, my hunch is that they don't have DNA. And the reason why is because when they arrested the guy from Colorado, they kind of alluded to the fact that they thought he was involved in the Delphi murders.
Yeah.
And then months and months go by and we don't hear anything. and then he's only charged with one thing, and then they say he's not a suspect in the Delphi murders. I think this would happen within a week. And so this guy, Charles now is arrested. And if we had DNA, we're talking weeks. Now, this was published, the article I'm reading from was published January 26th.
Mm-hmm.
So only a couple days ago. So, but what I'm saying is within 2 weeks, we should see some DNA testing, because that's how this case is number one. And as far as Indiana goes.
Yeah.
So you would think that they go, hey, and look, the nice thing about DNA is that if the DNA matches, then guess what FBI and law enforcement can do? They can show their hand. They can then tell the public, hey, this guy is a suspect, and you know why? His DNA matches.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to hide that from the public, because that's like this evidence that you can't argue against once you go to trial. So it's like, and then that the defense has that coming. But
the Colorado Trail hatchet guy, whatever you want to call him, I guess at some point we should actually have his name, but I didn't. We started down this path to discuss this new arrest, Charles Eldridge.
Mm-hmm.
But with the guy from Colorado who was once from Indiana, it's weird because that whole thing, like, it went weeks without them really saying if he was involved or wasn't involved.
It was months.
It was just speculation for the longest time. But you did have, I believe it was Liberty's family at first. Her grandfather's name is Mike Patty. And you had Liberty's family coming out very shortly after, and I think it was just a couple weeks afterwards, saying, we don't think we've been given information to not believe that he was involved.
Right.
And they thought the public responded poorly to those statements, because what I mean by that is that the public still held this individual from Colorado as being the prime suspect. And Liberty's family felt that may have prevented possible leads coming in during that time frame.
Right.
Now,
again,
you do have investigators that say that guy was cleared. The Colorado guy was cleared. It would be interesting to know what cleared him, because I'm with you. I question what DNA they have. Could they have deteriorated DNA that might be just enough to clear the Colorado guy, but not enough to clear somebody else? Because we've had people honed in on and looked at under the microscope of investigators in this case, but we've not had any charges brought forth.
Well, again, interesting thing that you bring up, because my hunch is that they don't. But then if you look at that situation, then when did they tell the family? When did law enforcement say, hey, we don't think this is the guy? And that might have been pretty quickly. And if that was pretty quickly, then my hunch changes and go, well, they do have DNA. And if they told them quickly, within 2 weeks, hey, this guy, he's not our guy.
I went to one of the Delphi talks at last year's CrimeCon, and
we met one of the I believe we met Liberty's grandma.
Yeah. And at one of these talks, it had relatives from both families, as well as the sheriff in charge of the investigation. And now I'm going completely off of memory, and I'm probably reading between the lines of things that were actually said. But regarding the individual from Colorado who was a suspect, at least in the public's eye, I believe that they said or alluded to him being cleared that they were able to prove he was not in the area at the time.
Yeah, he had a solid alibi.
Yeah, and I don't want to make that, etched in stone, concrete statement of that. Like I said, I'm going off of memory here, but I believe that's because my whole time I'm sitting on the edge of my chair going, are they going to say anything about DNA at this point?
Right.
And I think that they either outwardly said or alluded to that he was proven to have not been in the area at the time. And again, we don't know exactly all the information that they were using to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, but this is where, again, I think I'm just going to go on a small rant. Time me I'm going to try to do it less than 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
The media needs to do a better job of just being right and not first. Your job is to be right. Your job is to be truthful. And yes, you have to put this out there, but it's just like, here's these lines. You know, it was a sexual conversation on social media when the hookup happened. He discovered his 13-year-old virtual, whatever that is. He discovered his 13-year-old
victim.
Yeah, the 13-year-old victim, or the 13-year-old kid he thought he was talking to, was a cop. And then when his mugshot was released, ? Gasp. He's a dead ringer for the suspect of the Delphi killer. And I just think it's just irresponsible. You know,
are they saying he's a dead ringer, or are they saying that some have said?
No, that's what they're saying.
Who is they?
The Toronto Sun. So it's just that's all I'm saying. I just think this is what happened with, I mean, there's been 5 or 6 guys that have been arrested and everybody says the same thing. He's a dead ringer. Okay, let's just cool our jets. You know, we'll get to the bottom of this. I agree with you though. His actions lead to believe that he is capable of this.
Oh, 100%.
So therefore, and then does he look like him? Yeah. Is he a dead ringer? I don't think so, but I don't even think you'd call him a dead ringer.
I think he looks more like the composite. Again, that's my statement. He looks more like the composite than anyone else that I've seen presented to me. Now, again, how much is the composite a dead ringer for the real life suspect?
Right.
Is what you have to question. I think the nose is very interesting to me. I think the nose looks almost spot on. I try to stay clear of looking at the hair too much. There was and I can't remember what case it was that we covered, but there was a detective in one of these cases, not somebody that we spoke with directly, but somebody that we had read reports from newspapers, and I believe it was in a book. But he had said one thing that he always used when trying to identify a suspect, especially like in a robbery or a holdup where they have surveillance footage, and especially stuff that's released to the public, because a lot of times these guys won't know that they were caught on tape until they release it to the public, seeking the public's help.
Right.
And he says, you can change a lot of things about yourself. But one thing that this detective said that he always used was he loved when they would get a profile visual of the suspect committing the crime, because he always looked at ears. He always thought that was his go-to, was ears don't change. Hair changes. Facial hair changes. But the ears, especially, in a short period of time, your ears
to Van Gogh.
Your ears might change over years and years and years, getting bigger or whatever. But he liked to look at the ears. For me, I look at the nose here because we don't have a profile of the composite or this Charles loser, but the nose looks very similar to me.
Okay, so here's one of the things I want to bring up when we were talking about this week. Is here's the thing that I'm just putting out here. So, it says the killer was described as a white male between 5'6" and 5'10". Now, I wouldn't say 5'10" is short for a man, but what I definitely say that 5'6" is definitely on the shorter side for a man, and
right.
That weighed between 180 and 220. So we're talking about pretty short and stocky. Now, reddish brown hair. He has the reddish brown hair.
Mm-hmm.
So then I go, was he between 5'6" and 5'10"? And this article says sounds like Charles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't know. It's like we know he's 46. How tall is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Because if he's 5'7", 5'8", I'm going, hey, that's more likely.
Yeah, but the other thing too is you have to wonder how solid are they on those heights.
I bet they're very solid. I mean, because what we do have is we have the video footage.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have technology that they can just measure somebody like on film.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, you can do that stuff in Photoshop so easily now. So they would have a really good idea because they have a picture of him. We can measure the tracks he's on.
Right.
And if we know how big those are, then we're going to know probably within, I bet they know, they're saying 5'6" to 5'10". That's within 4 inches. I bet law enforcement has it within 2 inches.
Well, and you're right. And the thing is, like you said, it would be using a good point of reference. And what you have in the Delphi case is you have the picture of the man on the bridge, the guy that we were referring to as the bridge guy. You have him on that wood plank bridge. And you right. could do the math, you could do the angles, you could work it, and you could come up with a pretty good version of how tall you think this individual is. Now, you mentioned height as being of importance, and it certainly is. That is one of the things that has led people to believe that this other guy, Thomas Bruce, age 53, who he committed murder in November of 2018, that's how he became a suspect, right. At least in the public's eye. You know, and Thomas Bruce was a guy that I didn't think he looked like the composite at all. But you know what? I shouldn't say it that way, because with some of these guys, like what I want to ask you when you say you don't think that this Charles Eldridge looks like the composite, I want to say my follow-up question would be, well, does he not look like the composite? And my thought on Thomas Bruce was, I don't think that he looks like the composite, but I don't think that between the two, I could rule him out just by, I mean, he doesn't look different enough from the guy to say that it's not him. You know, this Thomas Bruce is a Caucasian male. We're looking for a Caucasian male. Right. In the Thomas Bruce case, he was actually unknown. They didn't catch him red-handed right away. He went into this Catholic store, and I apologize for the calling it that. I don't know what it was called.
The Catholic Supply.
Catholic Supply. Okay. So he goes in there. He pretends to be shopping, or at least says to the people inside the store that he is just browsing or just looking around. He leaves the store. He comes back very quickly. Likely, I'm guessing he went out to fetch his gun from his vehicle, and he goes back in, and he is now taken the 3 women inside the store hostage. He takes them to the back room, and there he's going to sexually assault all 3 of them, or at least attempt to do that to all 3 of them. And one of the women fought back, and she said, look, I'm not going to do whatever you're telling me to do.
Right.
And he ends up killing this woman. Now, he gets caught, and we have a great description of him because of leaving the 2 other witnesses. And this is where he gets on the radar in the public, at least. I've not seen anything. I've heard with all these, you're going to hear the same thing. And I say all these, let's say the flavor of the week, flavor of the month, whatever, because it's good to me to know that this is enough in the public's mind and still on the public's mind that the public are presenting suspects. Even if it's just saying, hey, this guy looks like this guy. That's good enough for me. We don't ever want to lose the public's help or the public's interest in solving this horrible double homicide. So what you have here is once they catch this guy, or at least once they release the description of him, people were saying, hey, this description is not unlike the Delphi killer.
Right.
You know, the height was similar. Caucasian male. And the other thing, too, is what this appears to me to be is in the Delphi case and with Thomas Bruce, both of these guys, now that Thomas Bruce's case, I think, took place in St. Louis. But in both of these cases, it appears to me a crime of opportunity where Bruce walks into the store, he sees 3 women there alone, and he goes out and gets his weapon and comes back and takes everybody hostage. It wasn't targeted. If it was targeted, he would have went in there immediately and taken the person hostage. And same with the Delphi thing. My gut tells me here on the Delphi that we have a guy that showed up there and was looking and watching and waiting, and it became an opportunity for him to to take somebody hostage. He found his victim by that opportunity of just happenstance.
Yeah. And we've seen this before. I mean, with different killers that will hike trails, just keep going. You know, they'll hike a new trail, and they're looking for openings. They're looking for where somebody becomes vulnerable.
They're looking for an easy target.
Yeah,
is what it is. And
yeah. So I mean, I don't know. This guy again, this Thomas guy to me looks as much as like the drawing as Charles. Now, if somebody wanted to argue and says, I think Charles looks more like the drawing, I'd probably agree there. The nose seems a little more similar. But again, how much is this drawing like the individual that's on film? So I do think what is interesting is if you look at Thomas Bruce, you look in the shoulder area, the head, neck, shoulder area, it looks very similar to me of the pictures that you see in the Delphi murders. But again, everybody has shoulders. So, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, is he the guy? Now there is some speculation that they think that they have some Thomas Bruce fingerprints at the Delphi sites, but I don't think that's been confirmed or denied.
Right. Right. And when they were looking for Thomas Bruce, they said they were looking for a white man about 5'8" tall, 40 to 50 years old. So again, that's not unlike the description of the Delphi killer. Now I'm looking over your shoulder here at your computer, and it looked like you had two very different pictures of Thomas Bruce.
Yes.
One where he's wearing glasses and has quite a bit of facial hair. And then you have the other picture of him once he has been arrested, and now he's much more clean cut during the arrest photo, where he has just a mustache and, other than the mustache, little to no facial hair. You have to wonder, like, I wonder I don't have the full description of him when they were looking for him, because I have everything that was released after they found Thomas Bruce. But you have to wonder, did he disguise himself going into that store? You know, is the picture that you have on your computer more accurate of him at the time of the crime, where he's going into the store with a lot of facial hair, a beard, with knowing that if he does go out and do what he's attempting to do, does he then, you know, has he altered his appearance in advance to change it back to normal, to his normal, after committing this terrible crime?
Well, and just to stay on my rants, because I actually like journalists. I think they have a very important role to play in our society. And when you have articles like printing about Thomas Bruce, and it says 5 facts you need to know, right? It says stuff like that he worked at a Jewish community center, and that he volunteered as a pastor. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's something you might need to know. And then it goes on to say stuff like, on his Twitter bio, Bruce writes, decorated Navy vet and trusty shellback, hashtag MAGA. And then one of the things, the other thing, Bruce attended Donald Trump's November 6th rally in Missouri. Okay, so my point being is, what does this have to do with anything? You know what I mean? Like, the next fact is, you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but this is crap journalism.
That's what I'm saying. It's I see this stuff and go, these are not 5 facts you need to know about this person. Like, do a better job of writing an article that says like 5 facts about what you need to look for.
Yeah, but here's what I do. I charge the public with this. If people quit reading and quit buying and quit paying attention to bad journalism, it will go away. As long as everybody clicks on it, reads it, subscribes to it, and, buys into it, it will never go away.
Right, but here's the part you're missing. You can't put this on the public, because if you're a true crime addict just like I am, right? You see Thomas Bruce, 5 facts that you need to know. You click on it. Once you click on it.
Yeah, but again, I'm charging myself with that. That wouldn't be my go-to website. That when I see something that says 5 facts you need to know, I've been a victim of that bad journalism in the past, and I've learned from that and go, you know what?
Yeah,
If something says 5 facts I need to know, I've learned enough along the way that those are probably not facts that I need to know.
I've seen some good 5 facts.
It's crap, so it's, we have to learn. Look, it's the whole thing. And maybe I am missing something. I don't know. But what I do know is this. If a company makes a terrible hamburger, terrible cheeseburger,
right,
but they sell 1 million of them, they're not going to change the cheeseburger. They're going to keep making the same cheeseburger until they quit selling them. And that's all I'm saying, is that as long as there are people listening to it, reading it, buying into it, clicking on it, as long as it's doing whatever they're intending for it to do with the information they're releasing, whether it be bad, good, or in between,
right,
they don't really care at the end of the day if people are paying attention to it. Now, if everybody turns their backs on them and says, whatever, I'm not going to be a part of this anymore, that's when they have to either die out as a company or change what they're doing.
Right, but that's the point that I'm trying to explain to you that you're missing. Is it doesn't matter if it is Thomas Bruce, 5 facts you need to know, or Thomas Bruce, suspected killer in the Delphi murders. If that's the headline, you might click on it. Once you click on that thing, they already got what they needed to out of it, because they're going to get paid from the advertisements and things like that. Once you click,
that backs up my point. Yeah, that it's
how
doing.
Does that back up your point?
It's doing what they're intending it to do, whether it be good, bad, or in between.
Right. Again, what you are missing is you can.
We have a true crime show, and we should talk about true crime instead of arguing about good.
It's when somebody says to me, well, I don't click on the 5 facts of that. I just know better. And what I'm saying is you can't know better, because No,
I've been a victim of that.
Here's the point that you keep missing. So do you want me to talk slower so you can understand it? Because I can do so.
Wow.
You could call this Thomas Bruce suspect in Delphi murders case. Now, are you clicking on that because you're interested in it?
Possibly.
Right. So you're not a dumbass for clicking on it.
I'm not saying anybody is a dumbass for clicking on anything. What I'm saying is you can learn from past experiences. And if you've figured out along the way that something is not good, is not of good quality, if you keep going back, then eventually you're the one to blame. And I don't mean you specifically or anybody out there specific to that, but if the five facts you need to know comes from heavy.com, well, then maybe you don't like heavy.com in the future.